Folks, good morning, I guess good afternoon almost, and thank you for taking the time to come to the session. My name is Krishna Vishnubhotla, and I am part of Zimperium's product strategy team, and we are a mobile security company. And essentially, we do two things as a mobile security company, right? One, we help companies keep their mobile devices safe, and we help them build secure, compliant, and resilient mobile applications, right? So there are three parts to how we run our business and why this is valuable to a lot of companies we interact with. One, we're a product company. Two, we have a very large research team that we call Zimperium Labs, right? This is about 25 to 30 researchers who are actively looking at what is going out in the world, right? Which threats are impacting mobile devices, which threats are impacting mobile applications, why it matters to businesses, right? Who are centering their business around mobile apps. And we're also a big part of Google's ADA, which is a nice way of saying we're helping Google assess the apps that are being uploaded to the stores, right? To help keep bad stuff out, right? We've been a partner with Google for about almost 5-6 years. Officially be part of ADA since 2019. Samsung's a big partner, and you'll kind of realize why all these partnerships matter when you think about app security. A couple of things we'll cover. One, when we say mobile app security, I think everyone has their own opinion of what the problem is. So we'll look at what it is from a customer standpoint, right? How do businesses look at their mobile app security problem? We'll tell you a little bit about what is our research team seeing out there, right? What kind of threats do we see? What kind of problems do we see? What customers care about, right? I think all of us see a new headline every day. It's overwhelming. There's a lot of noise, especially for app development teams, as to what to focus on. So we'll give you a little bit of insight on when customers see this, what do they care about, right? What are they reacting to, right? And what I want to leave you with today is two things. One, there is the technology problem, and there is how do you make security a business enabler, right? And first thing we want to do is give you a big picture view of how to approach mobile app security when you're within your organization, right? Because that will really help, right? How do we move the business forward while you're adopting security? Second, there are 2 or 3 areas in mobile app security that we consistently see patterns where things can be improved, right? And these are things we're actively working on with our customers. We're learning from them. We're learning from their business models and their technology. Okay, so let's get into it. So why even do this talk, right? The single important reason is we see the burden of security shifting to development teams, right? This used to be primarily security, whether it was called InfoSec, ITSec, AppSec, whatever you want to call it, but that burden is now shifting to development. The day-to-day of how you're going to secure your app, maintain your app, how are you going to put sec and DevSecOps, all this stuff, the burden is shifting to you guys, right? So the need to understand a little bit better of what's going on in the app security world is becoming more and more important. All right, now, when we think about mobile applications and you look at one of the 150 apps you have on your phone, right, they no longer do one thing, right? The mobile apps we know today do multiple things, right? We call them multifunctional. And the apps we love do 3 things, most of them. One is commerce, communication, and collaboration, right? This is what makes mobile apps valuable, but this is also what gets you into trouble, right? Because you have a whole ton of data that you're processing, storing to deliver a personalized experience. But when we go to businesses and say, what are you doing with mobile? How can we help you? Right? The problem gets much bigger, right? Because then you add additional layers to this problem. Because it's not just an Android, iOS, a Samsung device problem. Now it becomes end user, right? Your app is running on somebody else's device that you have no control over. Right? Think about it. You don't want an organization telling you how to use your $2,000 phone. Never going to work, right? Then you have businesses. Their readiness is different. What does that mean? Every company we talk to, Their expertise in mobile is different, right? Their capacity is different. Their ability to deal with mobile issues is different, right? So there's a readiness question that's always at play. Technology. The platform itself is evolving, right? Android's evolving. Samsung phones are evolving. Hybrid architectures, Flutter, you name it, right? It's almost impossible for dev teams and app teams to keep up. And you can't expect them to, right? And organizations realize this, that we can't expect this all the time, right? There has to be some middle ground. And then comes the threat economy. What do we mean by threat economy? You know, I was in one of the sessions and somebody had asked a question, if there's so many bad apps out there, why isn't everybody getting attacked? The question is there anything valuable in your app to attack, right? Does it give me access to something bigger that I can monetize, right? And that's the question. If your app is accessing critical infrastructure, somewhere there's sensitive data, you're processing payments, PII, you're very, very attractive to a threat actor. Why? He can sell it on the black market for a ton of money. If you don't have anything sensitive in your app, then grab a beer and enjoy the rest of the conversation because you have nothing to worry about, right? So again, I say this because this is the scope of the problem. It's not just a technology problem, right? There are layers to this problem and every organization has different capabilities. So let's start with what are we seeing? So last year, our research team decided, let's go into the App Store and assess 1 million apps for kicks, apparently. And this is what we saw, right? Now, there is a lot of stats like this out there, but a couple of things to notice. One, this conversation of whether Android or iOS is better, safer, not much of a difference when it comes to mobile applications, right? Because developers building these apps, pretty much the same, right? All the research that we do, 50% of mobile app developers actually develop both iOS and Android apps. So whatever habit you carry in one, they're carrying it to the other. And some of these should not be surprising, right? What do we do for code protection? We use R8, Lint, ProGuard. Do we need more? I don't know, right? So we see a lot of these apps have taken the first step into protection, but do not have a lot of security in them. And we'll talk about why, right? But again, if you see the categories, not very surprising. Then we said, well, maybe it's just a couple of different categories that have these problems. Not true. We looked at the top. When we go into the App Store, and if you ever say, show me the top apps that someone's downloading, they're across these sectors. And apparently, these mistakes are showing up across the board, right? It's interesting. So it's not just that banking uses a lot of apps, and they're the ones who are exposing. It's across multiple sectors. So what is going on? Well, we said, you know what, maybe it's a training issue, maybe standards are not understood. And we said, let's just look at through OWASP. Everybody knows OWASP, right? OWASP's been out there for a long time. There's an OWASP top 10, there's an OWASP mobile, then came MASVS and MS, it keeps going. But when we look at the top 100, 150 apps, even OWASP violations are through the roof, right? If you look at financial, medical, and retail, we focus on those because mobile apps are booming in these categories, right? Similar problems, OWASP violations, which we consider as table stakes. Like if I talk to developers and architects, they're like, OWASP. If nothing else, I want to do OWASP. And here are 6 areas that we constantly something or the other missing. Again, it doesn't mean you haven't done anything. It says maybe we haven't done enough. Right? But why is this? Right? Why is the fact that we have so many standards, so many cybersecurity tools, so much of money, but we're still seeing this?
Not enough development time.
Thank you. Trade-offs. Right? The number one reason when we go in, they're like, wait, you want me to go faster, but security is slowing me down? What do you want me to do? And we'll talk about this. Thank you for saying that. So we said, okay, you clearly don't care about security, you're focused on timelines. We ask customers, what do you care about? Like, when you see something as a headline, what scares you the most, depending on the business you're in, right? Because remember, if you're a bank, you're worried about fraud. But when you ask them, how do you think fraud's happening on a mobile app? they have a very different story to tell. They care about different things. So we asked these customers, what do you care about? Some of them who are in the consumer space, we do a lot of business with governments, they're like, we care about phishing. We have to protect our residents from phishing. Why? Because their services are going digital. They're worried that their citizens will get defrauded. Okay. Talk about banks. Nobody wants to go to a bank anymore. So your mobile banking app is your bank. They're like, oh, I want to protect my mobile banking app from malware. That's my biggest problem. Nobody wants to see Bank of America banking app got hacked. Nobody wants to see that, right? 0 day. We do a lot of business with medical device manufacturers, like insulin pumps, right? Think of kids wearing these. These guys absolutely do not want their app to run on compromised devices because it could mess up the algorithm that's telling you how much insulin the pump needs to pump, right? So different sectors have different sensitivities to threats, right? So that's why even though there's so much noise in the media about this person got hacked, that person got hacked, companies are looking at it as, this is my business. What assets do I have in my app? And what should I worry about? Right? That's the conversation that leads to reasonable security outcomes. Right? And that's what we're trying to do. Now, so where do you go from here? So we said, all right, big picture. Security comes at a cost. You guys all know that. Velocity becomes a problem. You can't protect everything. So how do you approach the problem? First, back up a few steps and say, how do you look at mobile app security so you can start making good decisions? And we said, okay, so there are 3 areas where things go wrong in mobile. One, you're very familiar with, which is during development. Why? Because development teams are making so many decisions, right? Not just the language, which phone to support, which OS to support, but which cryptographic algorithm? How are you going to protect your keys? What are you going to do, right? And a lot of these decisions, what we see is everybody, if I ask you all, how many of you use a source code scanner? Show me a raise of hands, real quick. Okay. Every company says yes to a scanner. And what do they use? They use the usual suspects. But if I ask them, do you know what in your app is going to get abused or exploited on a mobile device? Most people don't know. Because they're not used to asking that question. They're more used to syntax and semantics and structural analysis and so on, right? So you need to ask a different question. Second, most people believe once their app is in the store, it's in a walled garden. Again, another myth. All it takes to download your app is probably a Gmail ID or an iTunes ID. So I can download a banking app without being a banking customer and look inside. How long does it take? Any guess? To break open an app?
10 seconds.
Well, a few minutes and $100, right? It does. So companies are like, oh, we spend 9 months, $1 million into building an app. It takes us $100 and 10 minutes to break it. And that's the reality of most apps, right? But just being aware that this is happening, right? Third and foremost, it is the most intuitive, but the one people don't think about. When you build mobile apps, you're very little in your control. You don't control Android, you don't control the phone manufacturer, you don't control the phone it runs on, you don't control the guy using the phone, right? And most people, even though they have security in the app, the one question that always gets them, I'm like, what if someone tampers with your app? Do you know? Do you get notified? And they're like, no. So then how do you know your security is working? Most don't, right? A lot of security investments that we see today are development, and it's scanning and code obfuscation and stuff, but most people can't see what's going on once the app is released. So one of the things we encourage is if you're a mobile app team working with AppSec, look at your security through this lens. What are you doing in development that can stop abuse and exploitation? How can I prevent reverse engineering and tampering, right? Once my app is shipped, how do I get visibility into if something happens? Because if you know what's happening, you can make better security choices, right? Most people in the space say, I'll start with OWASP, then I'll do MASVS stuff, and I'm good to go. without knowing how their app is actually being attacked for the most part. But if you did, you would choose different security mechanisms, right? Your trade-offs that we're talking about would look quite different. You can't do them all, right? But you would make better decisions when you had that visibility, right? So focus on visibility. The other three things I will leave you with. The three areas, when you talk to them about security investments, like what tooling are you actually using? These three things come up all the time. One, cryptography, right? Why is this a problem? Most mobile app developers believe your secure PIN, your secure hardware on a mobile phone is bulletproof. Okay? It's not. When your phone's compromised, so is your secure hardware, right? And this is a notion that is become quite popular if you're processing payments, because they're paranoid about security, but most people think you can't penetrate it. Not true. So if you care, if you are storing sensitive keys, sensitive data in some kind of security hardware on your phone, think about it, right? Some phones might not have that hardware. Some phones have really old hardware, but your security needs to work irrespective. If you find yourself in this situation, think about things like white box cryptography where it matters, right? We have a lot of vendors doing this, right? When they are running on set-top boxes that don't really have hardware, you need an alternative, because losing your keys or copyrighted content is not an option, right? The second area, binary protections. I see this all the time. Right? A lot of security vendors talk about you got to do code obfuscation, anti-tampering, all of this stuff. Right? But we all know security comes at a cost. Right? Developers won't even touch security tools if they mess up the experience, make their app too big. No way. Right? So there's a cost. But the question, again, we ask them, what are you trying to protect against? Is your app, are you worried about malware? Is that how your app's being attacked? Are you worried about just compromised devices? They can't see, right? So everybody goes with, I'm just going to do OWASP. I want to get blessed, bare minimum, or there's a compliance I need to be compliant with. But if you could see, you would make way better security decisions, right? And there's tooling out there to help you see, right? For some reason, it isn't a priority for the lot of companies we talk to. Third, practical security, right? Again, I said there's so much of security tooling, so much of information out there, yet a lot of the apps don't have sufficient security, right? Big reasons. One, velocity. Two, security can't keep up with mobile applications. Most mobile app business models are based on being frictionless and real-time. You would not use an app if it took 10 seconds to load and you couldn't do anything in real time, right? Innovation is driven off. So why isn't security the same way, right? Security should be frictionless and real-time and should adapt to your app. There are solutions out there, but people are embracing solutions that force you to slow down. Don't have to do that, right? There are a lot of security solutions right now where you don't have to release an app every time. You get real-time notifications if someone tries to tamper with your app. The SDKs are less than 2 megs, so you don't have to be worried about not downloading on 2G or 3G or wherever else your app's deployed, right? Security has caught up in this space. So just go out, research, and look for it. Because the best way to embrace security in this space is it has to be frictionless and real-time. And the third thing is adaptive security. This thing's catching on. Essentially, it means if you release your app, it already takes 12 months for all of your customers to download it. You already are dealing with that problem. You release on day 1, day 2, a new threat comes out. What are you going to do? Release another app? Day 30, another threat. It's not sustainable, right? But there are solutions out there that let you update the security of your app over the air, right? Which allow you to deal with this to a large extent. So that's why when you're building mobile applications, the goal is to build an app that can defend itself, right? Which is real time, which is frictionless, that you can update over the air. That is the future of mobile application security, because otherwise you can never keep up. Whether it's CVEs or malware or whatever the next threat is, it's almost impossible to keep up. Right? So that's one thing I will leave you all with, is wherever you are, it's probably a great first step. The question you should be asking yourself is, how do I build an app that can defend itself? Right? That can see, detect, and defend itself on a device without you having to release an app every time. And there are solutions out there. But that's the model we need everybody to move to, because everything else is almost unsustainable right now. That's all I had. Thank you.